السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. It is mentioned in Luhuf, and the narrator says, Umar ibn Sa'ad, on this day of Ashura, rushed forward and threw the first arrow towards the army of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn, and he called out and he said, bear witness before the Amir that I was the first person to shoot the arrows. And once he shot his arrow, arrows began to fall like raindrops. When the arrows came towards the campsite of Imam al-Husayn, Imam turns to his companions and says, may Allah have mercy on you. Get ready for death from that which there is no escape, because these arrows are the enemy's war couriers towards you. On the day of Ashura, for some hours, there was a heavy collective war which rendered a number of companions of Imam al-Husayn martyred. At that moment, Imam al-Husayn placed his hand on his holy beard and he said, Allah's anger became severe against the people who attributed a son to Allah, and then on a people who considered God to be a trinity, and then on a people who worshipped the sun and the moon. The wrath of Allah became harsh on my community when they united to kill the son of the daughter of the messenger. Imam says, no, by Allah, I will never submit to them until I meet my God bathed in my own blood. At that time, Imam al-Husayn went to the enemies and called out, is there anyone to help us for the sake of Allah? Is there anyone prepared to defend the Prophet's family? At that moment, Hurr ibn Yazid al-Riyahi turned towards Umar ibn Sa'ad and said, do you want to fight against this man? Umar ibn Sa'ad said, yes, by Allah. And the easiest way is to chop off their heads and cut off their hands. Then Hur went and stood between his fellow folkmen. He began to tremble like a cane stick. Muhajir ibn Aus turns to him and says, by Allah, your action is very strange today. If I were asked who was the bravest man in Kufa, I would not have ignored your name. But in what condition do I observe you today? Hur replies and he says, by Allah, I am present, I'm finding myself in the position of opting between heaven and hell. And by Allah, I will opt for nothing but paradise, even if I were to be cut into pieces and then burned. He mounted his horse and he drove straight towards Hussein. He placed his hands on his head and he says, oh Allah, I have turned towards you. I have repented, accept my repentance, because I'm guilty of causing unrest and anxiety to your friends and to the children of the Holy Prophet. He asked Hussein and he says, may I be sacrificed for you? Oh Hussein, let me introduce myself. I am the same man who prevented you from returning to Medina. I am the man who has made things difficult for you. By Allah, I never imagined that these people would behave like this with you. I'm repenting before Allah. Will my repentance be accepted? Imam says, Allah will accept your repentance. Please come down. Hur turns and he says, in my humble opinion, I can serve you better mounted on my horse than on my feet. I would like that my last coming down to this ground be martyrdom. It is I who have revolted against you. So permit me to be the first one to turn around and go straight towards the battlefield. Perhaps after what I have done, if I am martyred, then tomorrow on the day of judgment, maybe I will be able to shake hands warmly with the Holy Prophet. Imam gives him permission, so Hur turns towards the battlefield. He fights a courageous war, and is killing many a warrior before he too is martyred. His pure body is brought back to Imam Al-Husayn, who first and foremostly cleans Hur's face from blood and dust, and then he calls out and he says, "O Hur, you are indeed Hur as your mother named you. You are free both in this world and the next." Thereafter, Muslim ibn Awsaja went to war. He exhibited a perfect fight against the enemy and remained steadfast during the calamities of the battle until he fell to the ground. He was still breathing when Hussein and Habib ibn Madahir rushed to him. Habib says, "O Muslim, may Allah have mercy on you." Imam then recited the verse of Surah Al-Ahzab that some of the believers have carried out their responsibility, whilst others of them are still waiting and they have not changed in the least. Habib went closer to Muslim. He says, "O Muslim, this condition of yours appears unpleasant to me, but let me give you glad tidings of paradise." Muslim responded in a very weak voice. He said, "May Allah also give you good rewards." Habib said, "O Muslim, although I find that I too am following in your path, I want to hear your very last wish so that I may carry it out." Muslim, with the little energy he has, points towards Hussein and he says, "Wage war in the service of this master until death overtakes you." Then John went to the battlefield. He asked permission from Hussein. Hussein said, "Oh John, you have become free. Take a path to safety. At the time that you were with us, oh John, you served us well. Now let no any trouble come to your path." John turned to Hussein and he says, "O Hussein, O son of the Prophet of Allah, in my life of ease and comfort, I was extremely indebted to you. Now I too shall bear the difficulties which you too are bearing." The time for Salah came, and companions of Imam Al-Husayn came to him, and they said, "O Hussein, is it not time for prayer?" Hussein says, "May Allah reward you." Imam looks at Zuhair ibn Qayn and Sa'id ibn Abdullah al-Hanafi. He asks them to stand in front of him as he prays Salatul Khawf. Every arrow which was thrown at Hussein was defended by Sa'id on his own body. He continuously fended until finally he dropped to the ground. And he called out, "O Allah, curse me on these people as you have cursed the tribes of Ad and Thamud. O Allah, convey my salutations to your messenger and let him know how we are bearing the wounds inflicted upon us. I seek my reward in helping the progeny of your messenger." Then he took a final breath and he parted into the next life. When all the companions of Hussein had been martyred, and none was left apart from his own household, Ali al-Akbar, Ali ibn al-Husayn, who was the most handsome of all the companions and most pious from the viewpoint of morality, sought permission from his father. Imam embraces him and they begin to wail. Imam permits him. Imam hopelessly looks at his son with eyes that have lost all hope. He lowers them to the ground and he cries out, "O Allah, be witness that surely a youth has rushed to the battlefield, one who is the most similar in person to your messenger in appearance and in nature and mannerisms. O Allah, whenever I long to look at your messenger, I would look at my son Ali." Then he turns towards the enemy ranks and he says, "O Ibn Sa'ad, may Allah cut off your generation just like you're cutting off my progeny." Ali rushes towards the battlefield and fights a courageous fight. He sends a number of unbelievers to the pits of hell. Then he returns back to his father and he says, "Oh my father, al-atash qad qatalani, this thirst is killing me, wa thiqal al-hadid qad ajhadani, and the weight of this armor is sapping my energy. Hal min al-ma'i sabil, oh my father, is it possible that you give me a bit of water?" Hussein begins to cry. He turns to his son and he says, "Ya bunayya, oh my dear child, min ayna li al-ma, where can I bring water from today? Put up some more resistance, for verily soon you shall meet your grandfather Muhammad, who will give you a drink after which you shall never be thirsty." Ali turns back towards the battlefield. He fights a courageous fight. Manqad ibn Barra al-Abadi throws an arrow which made Ali fall to the ground. He cries out, "Oh my father, accept my salam. May Allah protect you. Here is my grandfather. He too is sending greetings to you. He has a message for you." He says, "Oh Hussein, hurry up towards us." And with that he took a final breath and ended his life. Hussein came and stood by the body of Ali al-Akbar. He placed his cheek on the cheek of his child, and he says, "May Allah kill those people who killed you. What has made them so bold enough to go against Allah and violate the honor of the Prophet? Oh my son Ali, life after you is not worth living for." Zainab rushed out of the tents when she heard Hussein calling. She jumped onto the body of Ali and began to cry. Thereafter, one after the other from the holy household of Imam al-Hussein rushed towards the battleground and won the honor of martyrdom. Imam turns to his cousins and his family and he says, "Oh my cousins, oh my family members, be patient. Show forbearance. By Allah, after this day you will never be dishonored or humiliated." And the narrator says, "Then we saw a moon-like radiant face emerging from the camp. This young youth went to the battle. Qasim ibn al-Hasan ibn Fudayl al-Azadi inflicted a wound on Qasim's holy head that made him crashing to the ground, and he cried out, 'Ya Amma!' Oh my uncle Hussein heard the call of his nephew. He came rushing into the battlefield like an eagle or an angry lion. He struck Ibn Fudayl with his sword. Ibn Fudayl took the blow on his hand, which cut off his hand from his elbow. Ibn Fudayl called out to his companions, and his companions heard him. They too rushed towards the battlefield, but they rushed on horseback, and as they came galloping into the midst of the battlefield, they began to trample upon the body of Qasim. وَجَّلَتِ الْغُرْبَةِ فَرَأَيْتُ الْحُسَيْنِ قَائِمًا عَلَى رَأْسِ الْغُلَامِ. But as the dust settled, the Rawi says, I noticed Hussein was standing by the head of this young child. He was throwing his legs onto the ground. He was stamping on the ground. He said, "Far from Allah's mercy are those people who killed you, those on whom the day of judgment your grandfather will quarrel with them." Then he looks at Qasim and he says, "Oh Qasim, it's unpleasant for your uncle to hear you cry out for help, but he cannot respond to you, or that he responds to you, but it's of no benefit to you, O Qasim. Ya Allah, today the enemies are many and the friends are few." The narrator says that Hussein saw the slain bodies of his companions, and he too personally became ready to go and wage war. So he looks at the enemy rank one final time and he calls out, "Hal min nasirin yansuruna? Hal min mughithin yughithuna?" Is there anyone to defend the family of the Prophet today? Is there anybody who knows Allah and fears Him regarding our rights? Is there any helper to help us for the sake of Allah's mercy? Is there any helper who would help us seeking Allah's reward? At that time the women folk begin to cry. They realize that soon Hussein should be going towards the battlefield. The narrator says Hussein became extremely thirsty. He rode his horse together with his brother Abbas. They intended to reach the Euphrates. As they were both going towards the Furat, the enemies split them apart and encircled them. Hussein was attacked and he defended, but he was forced to return back. Abbas drove towards the Furat. He split the enemy ranks and he reached the water. As he reaches the water, he goes and he fills his water flask. As the water bag is filled, he puts it around his neck, sword in one hand, the flag in the other. Abbas begins to take the path of the palm trees and begins to swerve between them. The enemies call out that if Abbas is given a chance to go back to Hussein, they shall gain energy such that they shall crush every one of you. Do not allow Abbas to return back to Hussein. One of the enemy ranks realizes that everyone who stands face on face with Abbas is sent to hell. So he hides behind a palm tree. And when Abbas is galloping past, he lifts his sword towards the sky. He brings it crashing down onto the right hand of Abbas. Abbas's right hand is severed, and Abbas calls out. And he says, Wallahi in qata'tumu yamini. I swear by Allah, if you cut off my right hand, inni uhami abadan ad-dini. I shall forever protect my religion. Wa an imam sadiq al-yaqini. I shall protect the truthful Imam, Najlun Nabi Tahir al-Amini, the grandson of the Holy Prophet. Then another individual realizes that the flag of Abbas has fallen to the ground and the sword is being held by the left hand. He hides behind another palm tree and he brings his sword crashing to the left hand of Abbas, which too is severed. Abbas now has no arms. The enemy do not see him defending himself. They come in front of him and attack him from all sides. They pierce the water bag. Abbas falls to the ground. Abbas's body is covered in arrows. Abbas cannot hold himself up as he falls to the ground. Every arrow pierces through his blessed body as he hits the sand. Then Hussein realizes that he is left alone now on the plains of Karbala. Zainab brings Ali al-Asghar to Hussein, and she says, oh my dear brother, this child of yours has not had water for the last 3 days. Please ask the enemy to quench his thirst. Imam cradles his 6-month-old child against his chest. He takes this child in the midst of the battlefield and he calls out. And he says, oh people, you killed my companions, my friends and my household. And now only this infant has remained which is wailing for water. He gave him some water and quench his thirst. As Imam is uttering these words, the enemy rank begin to quake. They realized that they never signed up to come and kill a 6-month-old child. Umar ibn Sa'd gives the call and he says, silence the words of Hussein. Harmala takes an arrow. He throws the arrow, it pierces the wind and it comes into the blessed neck of Ali al-Asghar. So tiny was this child that the arrow pierces his neck and ends up in the arm of Hussein. Hussein takes out this arrow. The blood gushes forth. He holds it in his hand and he throws it towards the sky. Imam al-Baqir says that not even a drop of water fell back to the ground. Imam is said to have gone behind the tents, looking to dry and bury Ali al-Asghar. He walks back and forth and he calls out to Allah, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, radhan biqada'ihi wa tasliman li amrih. We are from Allah, and to Allah we shall return. We are pleased with His command, and we submit to His decree. Hussein now readies himself to challenge the enemy in war. He mounts his horse, he goes to the midst of the battlefield, and everyone who attacks Hussein in single combat is sent to the pits of hell. Hussein reminds himself and he calls out, he says, martyrdom is better than accepting disgrace, and humiliation is better than burning in the fire of hell. The narrator says, by Allah, I have never seen a man who has lost all of his family members and companions, who is bearing the sorrow of all these calamities, yet such a man is able to show such great bravery and courage on the battlefield. The continuous attacks from the enemies came. They came one by one and they realized they can't defeat Hussein. So they began to launch collective attacks in groups. They attacked him from the right, so he responded and he waged war against them. They attacked him from the left and he turned back and he attacked towards them as well. Rawi says, as soon as every group came to Hussein, Hussein attacked them and they began to flee like sheep running away from a wolf. Sometimes they would attack him from one side and Imam would call back and cry. And he would say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. There is no strength or no power except from the Almighty Allah. Imam fought continuously until the time that the enemy now came behind him and came between the women folk and separated Hussein from his tents. Imam called out and he said, woe be unto you, O followers of the family of Abu Sufyan. إن لم يكن لكم دين وكنتم لا تخافون المعاد فكونوا أحرارا في دنياكم. O people of Abu Sufyan, if you have no religion and if you do not fear the hereafter and the resurrection, then at least be free people and noble people in this world of yours. Shimr replied and he says, O son of Fatima, what are you saying? Hussein says, I say that I'm fighting you and you are fighting me. It is no fault of the women. So until I am alive, tell these rebels and these renegades and these unwise people that they should not disturb my family. Shimr says, this is your right, O son of Fatima. The enemy rank that has separated Hussein and the women, now all of them turned around and they locked their eyes on their prize, which was the head of Hussein. The enemies began to attack him and he continued to fight. Meanwhile, he tried to seek water from the Furat, but they blockaded him off and he became extremely weak. Imam halted for a moment to take rest. You would but expect that a man of such age, who has seen his family die and massacred in front of his eyes, now needs a moment to take a breath. As the Imam halts for a moment, they see this is their chance to pounce on the Imam. An individual throws a stone, he hits the Imam's forehead and blood begins to gush. Imam tucks his shirt up and wipes his forehead to prevent the flow of blood from his head. Then a poisoned trident arrow pierces the blessed chest of the Imam. Imam cries out and he says, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah. In the name of Allah, by Allah, and in accordance with the religion of Allah. Imam raises his blessed head towards the sky and he says, Oh Allah, you know that these people are killing a man who is the only son of the daughter of your messenger on the face of this earth. Then he pulls out the arrow from his chest and blood begins to gush. The enemy now see that Hussein is sapped of energy. The blood is pouring from this holy man. They begin to approach him from every side. Every individual who wants to commit the final heinous crime begins to quake and shake. So they come towards him and everyone inflicts one wound on the Imam. One man comes and he hits the Imam on his forehead such that he splits the Imam's head. He cuts the top of the helmet and blood begins to gush in. Nobody now comes towards Hussein and Hussein is left on the battlefield alone. Everybody who comes towards him begins to shake and runs back. They see the same face that the Prophet used to kiss. They see the same face that Fatima bore. Hussein slowly gathers his energy together. He stands up. He begins to walk back towards the tent and Zainab sees Hussein in this state. Hussein calls for a robe and he bounds his head with it, his head which is partially split. After a short pause, the enemies return back and encircle him. Hussein is fighting from every side. Then Hussein returns back to his family and he says, give me an old cloth so that I may wear it as an undergarment, because these individuals, when they kill me, I fear they should strip me of all my clothing. Maybe if they see such an old cloth, they won't bother taking it from my body. A tight shirt was brought to Hussein. He said, not this. This is a disgraceful dress. Then he takes an old cloth and he tears it apart and he wears it between his dress, under his dress and armor. But after Hussein was martyred, even this dress was stripped from him. The narrator says that Zainab sees Hussein lying on the ground. She calls out and she says, oh my brother, oh my leader, oh my household, I wish the sky had fallen down on the earth. I wish the mountains had come crashing down and scattered apart. Shimr calls out to his soldiers and he says, what are you waiting for? Go and finish off Hussein. Every individual who once again comes to Hussein just strikes a shallow blow because they're fearful of committing the final crime. Another individual comes towards Hussein as he tries to sit up and he hits Hussein from the back and he strikes him with a sword. Imam's face comes face first, crashing on the ground. Imam slowly begins to rise again and Sinan ibn Anas takes a spear and he pierces Every time Imam tries to sit up, they come and hit him one more time so he falls to the ground. Whenever somebody sees a piece of flesh on the Imam's body that has not yet received a wound, they come and inflict a wound on his body. Imam's neck is pierced with an arrow. He takes the blood that's flowing, he colors his head with it, and he dyes his beard with it. And then he calls out and he says, I am going back to Allah, whilst my hair is dyed with my blood and my rights have been violated. Umar ibn Sa'ad, who saw a man standing next to Hussein, says, woe be unto you, what is wrong with you? Come down and relieve Hussein. As he came down, he began to tremble and shake, and he turned around. And then there was this one individual who was said to have such a hard heart. Then he came down from his horse, and he sat on the chest of Hussein. And he cried out and he said, Oh Hussein, I bear witness that you are the son of Fatima, and that I am the one who is severing your neck. He takes out a dagger, he unsheathes a dagger, and he brings it towards the neck of Hussein. Zainab is watching from a distance. Rabab is watching from a distance. Sakina is watching as this man sits on the chest of her father. He takes the dagger towards the sky, and then he brings it to the neck of Hussein. ألا قد قتل الحسين بكربلاء ألا قد ذبح الحسين بكربلاء. Hussein has been killed. Hussein has been slaughtered. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. Hussein Shahid Karbala wa Wela.